Hello, everyone, and welcome to Get Healthy at Work's final webinar in our four-part series. As everyone will be well aware, today's webinar will focus on physical activity and the workplace. Practical advice for you and your workers. My name is Nathan Rahani from the Get Healthy at Work team, and I'll be facilitating today's webinar. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, which I am working on today. I'm joining this webinar from Camaragal land, and I'd like to pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge that across this webinar, we'll be meeting on the lands on many different nations. Now, I'm very excited to announce that I'll be joined by two great panelists today. On the webinar today, we have Susie Garland. Susie leads Transport for New South Wales Travel Demand Management Team. She has been leading the Travel Choices program since 2015, and prior to this has worked on a number of behavior change programs, both at the state and federal level. Travel Choices is Transport for New South Wales Travel Behavior Change Program, which has been working with employers in strategic business centers to understand needs, share information and the transport system, and encourage sustainable travel behavior. Welcome, Susie. We also have Morgan Farley. Morgan is an exercise physiologist who specializes in exercise and cancer. She is currently undertaking her PhD in exercise and cancer at the University of Queensland and runs her own business working with cancer patients. She has seen firsthand how physical activity can significantly reduce the risk of chronic diseases and how being active and having a good lifestyle habits can improve people's quality of life. And welcome, Morgan. So we are now just moments away from hearing from Morgan and her presentation, but before we get into that, I'll give a quick overview of today's webinar. We'll have three key sections to our webinar today. We'll start with Morgan's presentation on how to stay active in the workplace, followed by Susie's presentation on the benefits of active travel for individuals, workplaces, and communities. We'll then move on to the question and answer time. We did collect some great questions upon registration, and we will take that into account when we do the discussion period. If you have any questions during the webinar, please use the chat function on Zoom, and we will filter through as many questions and try to adjust them through the chat if time permits, and we may bring it up in the webinar as well. We'll also use a few interaction tools in the Q&A section, and you will see some polls pop up during that time, and I will let everyone know when that happens. And the final part of the webinar will be a summary of the webinar along with some key takeaways. So now I'm going to hand over to Morgan for her presentation on how to stay active in the workplace. Over to you, Morgan.
Thank you for that and welcome everyone. So as mentioned, I'll be talking about how to stay active in the workplace and why this is important. So physical inactivity is one of the biggest global public health problems of the 21st century, and it was the biggest until we were introduced to the lovely COVID. And now low cardiorespiratory fitness is one of the biggest contributors to mortality, and it's the second highest lifestyle-related cause of disease and illness in Australia, which is second to smoking. It doubles the risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and then also increases the risk of developing cancer, having a stroke, depression, anxiety, and increases someone's falls risk. Therefore, physical activity may serve as one of the greatest tools we have to fight chronic disease, yet 85% of Australians aren't currently meeting the guidelines. So how can physical activity help? Well, it can reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease, it can reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes, it can reduce the risk of many cancers, as we can see on the slide, reduce the risk of strokes, reduce risk of being overweight or obese, and then reduce mental health problems. So then what does this mean within the workplace? Well, the World Health Organization has recently recommended that the workplace is one of the ideal settings for health promotion and behaviour change, with 68.5% of the workforce currently classified as sedentary. And this is increased by time spent sitting at computers, sitting in meetings, lunchrooms only being nearby, parking on site. And this increased sedentary behaviour increases the risk of premature mortality, increases the risk of chronic disease, as I mentioned earlier, and can directly affect the productivity of the workplace. Absenteeism is when workers are away due to disability or illness, and presenteeism refers to the loss of productivity when workers come to work, but they might be sick, ill, and underperform. And this is most commonly caused by conditions such as depression, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, and allergies. Now, this can cost the workforce up to $26 billion. However, many of these diseases are preventable with lifestyle changes. Recent research has shown that workplace health programs resulted in a 25.3% reduction in sick leave absenteeism, a 40.7% decrease in workers' compensation claims, 24.2% reduction in disability management costs, and this equated to a saving of 5.8% per $1 invested on each employee within this wellness program. So exercise is good for us. It prevents disease. We aren't doing enough, but what is enough? So the Australian Physical Activity Guidelines recommend 150 to 300 minutes a week of moderate to vigorous physical activity and doing strength training. So that might be work within the gym, banded work, weight work, even just body weight work 3 days a week. The important thing to remember here, though, is this is the guidelines for healthy Australians. As soon as you add in a chronic condition, or you may potentially just be aiming to lose a little bit of weight, these guidelines almost double. So what is then moderate and what is vigorous exercise? So I always describe moderate exercise as you should be able to have a conversation while completing it. May only be sort of a short sentence, but you should be able to put sentences together. And this can be things as walking, easy swimming, easy jogging. It could be doing a dance class with a friend, or it can be playing in a playground with your children, different things where you can have a conversation. Whereas vigorous exercise, you shouldn't be able to say more than 1 or 2 words. Think more sprint intervals, circuit training, HIIT training, jogging or running up a hill, boxing. And another important thing to remember is that if someone is currently doing nothing, 300, even 150 minutes is a lot to take them up to. So it should be a gradual increase, and it should be frequent. So it can be broken up into small segments. So it could be 3 10-minute blocks per day, or it could be 2 15 blocks morning and afternoon. But it's better to do something every single day as opposed to, say, doing 2 hours all on the weekend. So then how can we help stay active at work? So there's lots of different sort of options, and we've got some here for the office. And then, as I can appreciate, some may still be working from home with COVID. So from the office, education posters to help intrinsically motivate people on why exercise is good and why they should be doing it, and some tips and tricks on how to. Starting walking groups either before work, after work, or at lunchtime. You can even do things such as walking meetings. So if you're if teams have a weekly review, you could walk to the local park or walk down the street and have these conversations while moving. Lunchtime sporting teams, step count competitions. Some people can be a lot more motivated when there may be a prize or an incentive at stake, even if it is just having their name at the top of the leaderboard. And these days, most people tend to have Fitbits or iPhones or Apple Watches, but iPhones is all people need for this. It has an inbuilt step counter. It can be walk while eating lunch, take it outside, potentially also offer money incentive to some of these physical activity competitions. Also providing staff members with headsets. That means they could get up and walk while doing conversations, take the stairs while doing conversations. And then if you're from home, so while we can't put up posters, you could do things like educational emails or a weekly or monthly wellness email with some tips and tricks in there. Walk to a local cafe to do an hour or 2 of work and then go back to your home office. Again, you can do those step count competitions, money incentives, headsets. You can walk around or move around the house. Weekly walking meetings where you can be on call with your headset or earphones in and walk while you're chatting and talking about the agenda. Or weekly arranged social sport. So with the COVID rules quite relaxed now in Australia, you can meet at a local park near the office and play a game on a Friday afternoon instead of, say, the Friday after work drinks. Does anyone have any other questions? No. Beautiful, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Morgan. That was a fantastic presentation. A lot of great learnings there for our audience, which I'm sure we'll dive a bit deeper in the question and answer section. Now I'll pass it over to Susie from Transport for New South Wales, who will be presenting on the benefits of active travel for individuals, workplaces, and communities. Over to you, Susie.
Thank you. And thanks, Morgan, for setting the scene about why physical activity is so important in the workplace. And I'm just going to focus on how we can all adopt a more active commute this year. So when I think about the case for adopting more active commutes, I'm coming from the perspective of travel demand management. And my work focuses on the benefits of managing demand on the transport network by working within demand centres like workplaces and looking at the 4 key travel behaviours of retime, reroute, reduce, and in particular for active travel options, remode. And in Transport for New South Wales, we've delivered a huge range of behaviour change programs focused on shifting people to walking and cycling. And we've seen how integral they are to ensuring an effective transport system, but most importantly, successful places. And why is this important to you? Because places where you live and where you work, and this is why we should all work together to promote and support active travel in our workplaces. Did you know that before COVID, there were 2.2 billion trips a year in New South Wales made on foot or by bicycle, including over 1 billion trips associated with the public transport journey? Just think about this. It's pretty huge. Employee health and wellbeing are critical elements for employers to create a resilient and healthy workforce, even more so as we all navigated the lockdowns, changing how we worked and travelled due to COVID, and now as we transition to COVID as a BAU. I'd like you to think about how your travel has changed since COVID. Does it look more active or less? And how do you think we are stacking up against the pre-COVID number? It's no surprise that mobility patterns have changed significantly through COVID-19, and the number of people being active has changed. In some instances, we've increased the number of people cycling in Sydney, but we've also decreased the number of people using public transport, and working from home has decreased incidental exercise for some. The New South Wales Government is committed to encouraging more people to walk or cycle as part of their everyday travel. And the work we're doing with organisations through our Travel Choices program shows this. But this is not all that the government has done. In Sydney, to support the changes in mobility due to COVID, the New South Wales Government has delivered a number of dedicated cycleways available across Sydney and New South Wales to help people move around safely and easily on their bike, including new pop-up cycleways, which has seen more than 15,000 weekly trips being taken each week. The New South Wales Government is also piloting new 40km/h speed zones and 30km/h trials in Manly and Liverpool in conjunction with the pop-up cycleways to provide safe route options for commuters and pedestrians. The New South Wales Government has also committed to making public transport safer with increased cleaning, more buses in response to COVID, and we're also looking at ways of encouraging people to spread the peak. And why is this important to understand? When we're talking about public transport, it is often lost in the conversation with active travel. An Australian report using Victorian Travel Survey data reported that people who use public transport on a particular day spent an average 41 minutes walking and or cycling as part of their travel. This is 5 times more physical activity than those who only use private transport like a vehicle, who on average only spend 8 minutes walking or cycling for transport and representing an additional 33 minutes of physical activity. We know an active commute will not suit everyone, and it might not be something that happens every day. As a general rule, we promote an active commute for those within a 5-kilometre radius of their workplace or as an incidental outcome of promoting public transport. Now more than ever, as workplaces are resetting and re-establishing their new working practices and rebuilding what the workplace means for their organisations, hybrid models of remote and office work are becoming more normal. And with this increased flexibility, it's an opportunity for people to reassess the way they commute on their days in the office and also when they're working from home, and use this opportunity to consider active travel as part of their commute. I'll quickly run through how you can do this at the end of the presentation, but I'd really like to encourage you to think about how you can help by walking and cycling for commuting and short trips to relieve pressure on our roads and public transport networks and be part of healthy lifestyles for our communities. So what do we know about active commutes? One thing we do know is that that taking up an active commute is not something that should be done alone. It takes a supportive environment and sharing stories and experiences, and also the benefits people found in taking up active travel. Our Travel Choices program have worked with and profiled a range of bike commuters from across Greater Sydney who've shared their bike commuting stories with us to help motivate and support others looking to make the shift. I'd like to share just 3 with you quickly. The quote on this slide shows how active commutes can be done with family and captured within trip training. And if we move on to the next slide, these quotes really highlight that active commutes can also save money, they can also save time, and they can be a really reliable form of travel. So we know the benefits and we know it can't be done alone. So how can you help? Encouraging and supporting active commutes for employees really does start in the workplace. As we move from COVID-19 response to COVID normal in our places of employment, it's more important now than ever before to think about our working practices and how this impacts physical activity and how our employees commute to the workplace. It doesn't matter how much transport infrastructure there is, if there is no place to refresh after an active journey, particularly in summer, it creates a barrier for employees. Don't underestimate the importance of facilities such as ended trips, bike storage units, and lockers to supporting employees who want to walk or ride a bike to work. In response to COVID-19 and reservations around hygiene and safety in these areas, we developed a guidance fact sheet with advice and practical tips on how workplaces can manage these areas safely and effectively. And this is available on our Travel Choices website. But the ended trip is just a part of the supportive environment workplaces can provide. Building an organisational culture that supports, encourages and rewards active commutes is another critical area. There are many ways of doing this, but first, get involved and promote walking and cycling events within your workplace. There are lots of great events to get behind. For example, Ride to Work Day in October and Walk to Work Day in September. We had a really great example of this with an organisation we work with called ACOM, who set up a 6-week challenge last year to encourage team members to get physically active. The 10,000 Steps Challenge saw 198 teams move more than 426 million steps by a range of activities from walking to Pilates to cycling to yoga. And the challenge has been a great way for individuals to get outside, to get active and to have some fun with their colleagues during a time when many were socially isolating and working from home. And ACOM are finding that the challenge has supported staff to consider walking or riding into work as they gradually return to the office. You can also profile and promote walkers and bike riders within the organisation and get leadership buy-in. Incentivise and reward those who take up an active commute by offering vouchers, and create a community of active commuters to help support each other and those interested in giving it a go by setting up a bicycle user group within your workplace. You can provide information and remove that barrier of the unknown. For example, why don't you try mapping out key routes for walking and cycling for your workplace to key areas within the 7-kilometre range. Travel Choices have our own travel access guide template that you can complete for your workplace. Other initiatives that support active commutes, specifically bike riding commutes, are courses that focus on knowledge and capability building. The City of Sydney and other local councils offer a range of bike riding courses for individuals, but also for workplaces. But most of all, make it fun, whatever works for your workplace culture. This can be done by running competitions or setting targets for numbers of active trips, and display these statistics prominently when entering or leaving the office or through weekly communications. Doing this shows that you value active commutes and you support those that do this. So going back to that number of 2.2 billion trips a year in New South Wales for active trips and over 1 billion associated with public transport trips, let's all make sure that COVID-19 results in workplaces that make this number a much larger one, not smaller one. And you don't have to do this alone. Our Travel Choices program is a free resource to help businesses, individuals and organisations prepare for and adapt to the changes to Sydney's transport network. The Travel Choices team is here to provide support for those making the shift to more sustainable ways of moving into, out of and around Sydney. And our COVID Safe Travel Choices initiative is supporting employers to make the right decisions about if, when and how to travel as restrictions are easing. We can help you design high-level travel demand strategies and resources for your workplace and provide you with regular updates and data about what is happening on the transport network. We'll also be running a series of free educational workshops to explore practical ways to implement sustainable travel solutions in your workplace using behavioural interventions, workplace initiatives and incentives. So please get in touch at travelchoices@transport.newsouthwales.gov.au And we'll add you to our mailing list. And please also visit our website at mysydney.newsouthwales.gov.au/COVID safe travel choices. Thank you.
Thanks, Susie. That was great. It was a really good insight into the benefits of active travel for both individuals and the workplace. So now that we've done the presentations, we're moving on to the question and answer time and a discussion period. So we'll start with a poll for the first question. And this question is to get an idea of everyone's preferred form of exercise. Morgan, this is probably a very classic question that I'm sure every exercise physiologist gets asked. What is the best type of exercise?
So that is a great question. And I guess as a whole, there isn't one best type that would fit everyone. I always say the best type of exercise for you is what you enjoy, because you're not going to do something if I sit here or you sit there and tell employees to say running is the best form of exercise for your health. But if you say perform a survey like the one we've got within the workplace that collates what people tend to enjoy, you can then design a bit of a wellness program or put out some consult an exercise physiologist to develop some exercise sessions for your workplace. It's come up here that amongst you all, walking is the best type, and walking is a really easy way to include within the workplace. The one thing to be mindful of with walking and with any exercise is actually the intensity of it. Some people can get caught in the trap of going for a walk, but it is very leisurely. And to get the health benefits of exercise, you do need to be conscious of getting your heart rate up and getting either a bit short of breath, but able to have a conversation in that moderate category, or that vigorous, so being really puffed, really short of breath, struggling to talk. So I think instead of picking one sort of modality as the best, I would say intensity is the best way to measure the best type. So that short of breath but able to talk, or really short of breath, couple of words. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. I did have a follow-up question on that. Do you have any suggestions for those who want to get in more of the moderate, vigorous intensity during work hours?
Yeah, so that would be, again, knowing the area that your building is in. So having a look at maps. Is there a hill nearby? One of the best ways I find to get your heart rate up to incorporate that moderate to vigorous, instead of just walking, say, around the river or walking on a flat path, is to find a hill. And you can say, walk up as fast as you can, or even jog up as fast as you can up that hill, walk back down as your recovery. And if you do that for, say, 15 minutes, that's your allocation of vigorous exercise done for the day. So knowing your surroundings, or if you've got a stairwell, running, jogging up and down those stairs. One thing I suggest as well to businesses and companies looking to increase the physical activity is have a designated space at work. It may be a meeting room where there are some mats. There may be some bands and some light weights where you can start to do some body weight circuits. That will also help get the heart rate up, and it enables the workplace to facilitate it and show support to their employees to exercise as well.
That's great. I think that could be quite low cost as well, by providing those little bits of equipment where people can just use on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and at some places choose to say you have to bring your own equipment in. However, there's a space that you can exercise and do whatever you want to do during the work hour. And generally then the employees say, oh, well, let's just go down to Kmart, spend $50, that's $5 between us all, and they can get a range of equipment, and it does the job.
That's great. Okay. Susie, this question is more suited for you. What are some of the individual advantages of incorporating active travel into your daily work routine?
So many benefits. Number one is, you're going to improve your health because it provides with more opportunities to be active throughout your day. We're all really time poor as well, and it gets you from A to B. It gets you to your place of work, and it also combines exercise and that physical activity. It's a cheaper form of transport as well. It provides you with that more reliable commute time because you're not stuck in traffic. You don't have that stress and frustration of trying to look for a parking spot. And it's good for the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Personally, that's the main reason, one of the main reasons I don't drive to work is the traffic, the hassle of finding a parking spot. It's just adding that much stress and uncertainty of getting to work on time. And definitely one of the pros of active travel is, the certainty of it, and also incidental activity, just adding more physical activity into your day-to-day life.
Definitely.
And also still on an individual level, Susie, what are some of the best tips and tricks for someone who will be introducing active travel with public transport into their workday?
I think number one, the best tip I have is to use Transport for New South Wales Trip Planner to plan your trip, and that connects with public transport with options available for walking and riding a bike. So it's really simple. You just select your preference for walking or cycling and how long you want to allow for each option and your preferred speed, and that connects you to your public transport journey. We've also got bike parking facilities, including bookable bike lockers or Opal-enabled bike sheds available at many of our stations and wharves and bus interchanges in New South Wales. And bike racks are also freely available at most public transport locations. So you can also take your bike on Sydney trains too. And I think another tip in terms of walking as well, it's a great way to get outside and in the city and explore, and it's a perfect kind of end to your public transport journey. So if you're looking at getting more activity into your day, you could hop off the bus or the train, stop earlier and walk the rest of the way to your office just to get those steps and that activity in at the start of your day.
Those are really good tips. And another follow-up question for you, Susie. Can you please let us know some of your favorite tips and tricks for introducing walking, cycling, or jogging as your primary mode of transport to and from work?
Yeah, sure. I think a really great tip if you're starting out on a bike commute is to reach out to your local bicycle user group or, a state bike support group. Most major cities now have, share or hire bikes as well. So that's a really good way to try it out before you make that investment if you're not sure. And really, there's a lot of bike riding courses, particularly since COVID has started, that are coming out through community groups and different riding groups in the local council. Or connect with a friend or a trusted colleague that rides into work and get them to show you the route so that you're more comfortable. Again, go to our Transport Info site, which has a range of travel planning tools to help you plan your bike journey, and it's got lots of practical advice and tips to get started, and lots of safety tips as well. Key is just to plan ahead and get familiar with the route. So again, use our Trip Planner app, and if you're walking, think about taking it up recreationally first. So, I think Morgan mentioned about, local walking groups and, getting that in at lunchtime. So, you can get into those groups to start recreationally first. Even if you're driving, start parking further away and, start walking in for the rest of your trip, or practice on the weekend and try out that route. And then I think the last key point is to make sure you talk to your employer about what your plans are as well, so that they can help create a supportive environment. Find out what end of trip facilities you have that are available at work to support your commute as well, which is really important.
I really like the point about finding like a bicycle user group or someone who is cycling. From my experience, anyone who does cycle regularly, they're quite passionate about it and they're very keen to get someone else involved.
Yeah.
And especially
very,
during COVID,
very welcoming. It's a community. So I think it's a really great way to get started. Yeah,
and especially during COVID, so many people, I think bicycles were sold out everywhere. So there's definitely been a spike in, cyclists. So I think there's more than ever, there's more people cycling nowadays. So you can probably find one in your workplace.
Definitely.
Excellent. Morgan, this next question is probably more suited for you. Are sit-stand desks better than sitting all day? And do you have any general tips or recommendations for sit-stand desks in the workplace?
Yeah, so they sit-to-stand desks are better than just sitting all day because they give you the option. I don't think it is good. It places a larger load if someone is standing all day. So for 8 hours a day, they're standing and working. That is going to get quite fatiguing after a while. And if you're not standing with good posture, it can start to cause a bit of aches and pains, as we'd all know when we've been standing for a couple of hours at a time. But the sit-to-stand desks give great options. So I tend to recommend do half an hour standing, half an hour sitting, or even shorter bursts and stints. It just gets the blood flow moving, the body moving. Also, sometimes I recommend, if sit-to-stand desks aren't an option for your workplace or for the type of work that you do, is once every hour, you take a 10-minute moment where you actually do stand up anyway. You do a couple of little stretches, move, and then sit back down and go back to work. But I definitely think if the option's there, utilize them and break up your day, sort of do half hour on, half hour standing, half hour sitting, or an hour standing, hour sitting, whatever time frames work for you. It could be 10 minutes and 10 minutes, but do gradually build into increasing the time spent standing. Don't just go from sitting all day to standing for an hour at a time. Do sort of start with 10 minutes and build on that from there.
That's great. Any recommendations for those people who might be working from home who don't have access to a sit-stand desk?
Yep, so that would be more the potentially every 50 minutes. So each hour you take 10 minutes where you stand up, walk around, do a couple of little stretches, or it could be you might make a bit of a rule for yourself. Every time you get a phone call, you'll stand up and sort of walk up and down the hallway or around the room that you're working from at home. You may have you could set yourself a little circuit almost that you could do. So morning tea, before you have lunch, before you have afternoon tea, that might be 5 minutes, but it could be something simple like doing high knees on the spot, jogging on the spot, do 50 seconds on, 10 seconds rest, just something to get the blood flowing and get you moving again.
That's a great idea, actually. Utilizing one of those timers as well that, I don't know what they're called, the tomato timers or Pomodoro timers, where you can definitely set like a 5-minute break to trigger you to think about it. Yeah.
Or every time you have to switch tasks, you get up, you walk, kind of how some people might use getting up and going to the kitchen and making a cup of tea or coffee as kind of a mental reset, a break, a bit of a procrastination tool sometimes. Use get up, go for a walk, do a little 5-minute circuit on the spot just to get your blood flowing, reset, refocus, and then get back into work.
I like that tip about going to the kitchen, or like always filling up your water. One, you're drinking more water throughout the day, and you're also getting the exercise in. Yeah. Okay. So the next question is another poll. I will just load it up. And while everyone is answering this poll, Susie, what is the best way for a workplace to support active travel?
I think it's really important. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach to what the best initiative is to support active travel. So what we recommend, we have an employee ebook on our website, and we use behavioural sciences to encourage workplaces to think about and encourage different initiatives in their workplace without mandating change or restricting that employee choice. And we have 3 steps that we focus on. And number 1 is to really understand what your employees' barriers are, what their needs are for active commutes, so that you can design targeted interventions. So we recommend doing a survey of your staff to find out what is stopping them from being more active, and then implement and design behavioural solutions and interventions that encourage and support that active travel within the workplace. So, things like reframing and highlighting the benefits of the active commute and addressing any of the safety concerns, with coming into the office, all those kinds of things, and then evaluating what's working. So, all of these, information is key, end of trip facilities, all of, promoting the health benefits, but also it really is down to workplace context as well and what your specific staff needs. So we kind of always recommend following that approach.
Those are really good ideas right there. So I've just shared through the polling results. Looks like most of the participants really appreciate the end of trip facilities. And I think, as you said, it's very dependent on the workplace. So if they don't have it, I'm sure most people would want something like that, or it's just, if they do have it, they probably would want something else. So utilizing a survey to identify what people want and what they're going to utilize most is probably a really good first step to, take.
Exactly.
Did you have any thoughts on any of the results here?
I think end-of-trip facilities is definitely, feedback that we've had from employers is definitely that's kind of the number one kind of hot topic in terms of encouraging staff to be more active and returning to the workplace since COVID. And so that's kind of, we've really focused on developing resources to help employers, make sure that, it's sanitised and the hygiene is maintained, because I think that's kind of an area that has been a big focus and concern for staff. So there's definitely ways to manage it moving forward in a COVID-safe way. So we're very happy to provide that fact sheet after the session too.
Excellent.
But without end-of-trip facilities, it makes it very difficult to have an active commute, because you need somewhere to freshen up before you go into meetings and, into the office.
Absolutely. Okay, the next question is another poll. And this question is also more suited for you, Morgan. So I'll launch the poll. So what is the best way for a workplace to support physical activity during the workday?
So similar to what Susie said, there is no one size fits all, and it depends on sort of the investment that the workplace wants to make money-wise, as well as the context. But I think there's lots of sort of baseline things that workplaces can do, such as provide change room facilities at work, because if you are getting hot and sweaty, you do need to freshen up. And that's one of the biggest barriers I find. And lockers where people can come in on a Monday, put their change of clothes in for the next couple of days, so then they don't have to worry about running and carrying a backpack and things like that. Second, I find the competitions work really well. So step count competitions, or it may be a certain amount of points for different types of physical activity that they do, or starting corporate teams. Like you may pick a triathlon event, and some people can do it individually, or some people can form teams to build that camaraderie, team, external motivation of doing it all together. But it's for an event. It's not just for the sake of it, which can help motivate people. And then if you want to start looking at increasing the investment and the costs, it's providing things like group fitness classes, potentially either an allocated space within the office, or connect with a local gym or a local exercise physiologist who can run those corporate exercise sessions. It might be organising a sporting team, and then it's organising the lunchtime work group. So as you can see, as the more we progress on, the more investment and money is required from the business. But that's where you start to get the best returns. I think if there is, and what's come up as the most popular is this subsidised corporate gym membership. That's going to take away cost, and cost is a big barrier. But not all workplaces can afford to do that. So meeting halfway by providing a space, or it could be organise a discount. If you go to a certain exercise physiologist, they'll write you an individualised program to exercise at work in your gym for a 50% off. That might be 50% subsidised by work, 50% paid by you, things like that.
I really like that there are so many options available, and it can go from no investment at all, where you can organize a step challenge or some sort of competition in the workplace. And I'm not sure if the audience is aware that there is the free application or web page 10,000 steps, where you can create teams for your workplace and create a step challenge any time of the year. And some of the businesses that we work with in Get Healthy Work, they've utilized it, and it's worked quite well. And so that's a easy way that you can get people active, and also encourage that healthy competition in the workplace to get people a bit more active. And as you said, you can definitely do some really interesting things once you have the financial backing to you can do subsidized gym memberships, organize sports teams and stuff like that. Or even one of the recommendations here is stand desks. Definitely different strategies that you can employ.
I find the triathlon one works really well within workplaces, because it's being swimming, riding and running. Generally, most people are happy, comfortable doing one of them and entering the teams in, because then everyone's accountable to each other as well. So it's not just people going out on their own trying to do things. It's a nice team environment that can help support each other. And like I said, being swim, riding and running, majority of the workplace are able to do one of them, and then everyone's included. And then you've got the ones that might be more athletic and train a fair bit, who might give a whole one a go, but everyone's there as a team.
Absolutely. We've got 2 more questions left, and I'm just conscious of time, so we'll just run straight through them. Susie, do you have any advice for parents who do the school drop-off and or pick-up who want to include active travel into their commute?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the data has been really showing us that during COVID, we are seeing more parents driving their kids to and from school. So there could be some really big time saving in terms of like not sitting in traffic as well. So that's a big plus if you want to kind of consider walking or riding with your kids to school. Also with employers being, some employers are being more flexible in terms of more flexible start and finish times or working from home. I think that also presents an opportunity. So for example, if you're working from home, why not try walking or riding your kids to school and then come home and start your day? Or if you're working in the office, you can walk your kids to school and then hop on some public transport and go into the office. And if parents are concerned about safety and they want to start riding with their children, it's just a reminder as well that children under the age of 16 can ride on the footpath, and accompanying parents can do that too. Again, use our trip planner to test out the route and find the most safest way to get there. I think as a parent as well, something I'm really conscious of is that timing is everything as well. So try to kind of leave a bit earlier in the morning and get in that practice so that you've got enough time and you're not in a rush, and comfort as well in terms of making sure that you and your child have the right footwear and, appropriate backpacks to carry the load. As I know there's be a lot of kind of heavy books and things when kids are traveling. And just pick one day a week to start. And if mornings don't work, try an afternoon if that kind of suits you better. It's just a really good way for you and your child to get more active in the day.
Absolutely. And finally, Susie, can you give us a sales pitch as to why workplaces should support active travel for their own benefit?
I think the biggest thing is if you think about how much time one of your staff members spends at work, it's about 1/3 of their lives. So that is huge. And so that's a huge amount of time. And being physically active improves not only our physical health, but our mental health, which positively will impact our workplace. And employers really don't have to do huge things. They can make small adjustments to their workplaces and support active commutes. And that can make a huge impact to their employees' health, but it also will really drive the workplace's productivity as well, which is another bonus.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the great discussion, everyone. We've reached the end of the webinar, so I'm going to use the final 2 minutes to sum up what we have talked about and highlight some key takeaway messages. So here are some of the key takeaways that I personally gained from today's webinar: that there are clearly a lot of benefits, both for individual health and for a business or an organization, to support workers to be active. And as we know, healthy and active workers are more productive, they're more present, and therefore better for the workplace. And the plus is they're in better health, which is better for their well-being and health outside of work as well. Active travel is an excellent way that individuals can add in opportunities to be active throughout the day, and businesses can also play a massive role to support their workers to do so. And there are many ways where workplaces can support workers to be active and also promote active travel. And some of the things that I've, pointed out are, having end-of-trip facilities is a really good way to encourage individuals to seek alternative methods of travel, promoting walking and cycling events such as the Ride to Work Day in October or the Step Challenge in September, which is called Steptember, and establishing walking groups and normalizing walking meetings, especially for those who work from home. Susie or Morgan, do you have any other final thoughts to leave the audience with?
I think just try and get creative and get feedback. So make sure what you're providing and options you're providing are what the people want and that they're enjoying them. Because at the end of the day, if people aren't enjoying the type of exercise or the type of traveling that they're doing, they're not going to keep it up. It's not going to become a lifestyle change or a habit. So keep seeking feedback and present potentially a few different options.
That's great. And Susie?
I think just the key thing is to use this opportunity that COVID's presented to really rethink and reestablish both your commute and also how your working practices within your organisation. It's a really good time to do that. And we have a huge amount of resources on our Travel Choices website. So please go and visit that and use that to implement initiatives within your workplace.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Susie and Morgan, as well as our support crew behind the scenes, Stuart, Greg, and Madeline. And that brings us to the end of today's webinar and also the 4-part series. And thank you so much from the Get Healthy at Work team. And if anyone has any interest in finding out more about Get Healthy at Work program, please head to our website at gethealthyatwork.com.au. Thank you so much.